Constitutional Enforcement Pre-Study Materials, Part 5. And here we go. What is jurisdiction? It's basically the right to speak to an issue, enforce a contract, exercise some right or agreement, within the context of a juridical framework. So jurisdiction involves 1. An action, 2. A right to take that action, and 3. A juridical framework. A juridical framework can be provided in many ways. We are familiar with the juridical framework provided by counties, states, businesses, clubs, and yes, corporations. These are all exercised within even larger juridical frameworks as they are organized and applied within the global jurisdiction of the air, the international jurisdiction of the sea, and the national jurisdiction of the land and soil. A juridical framework can also be public or private in nature. As you have seen, most of the courts functioning in America now are private corporate tribunals or military tribunals. As the name tribunal suggests, the majority of these courts function under Roman law. Some function under the Lesser Administrative Code. A very few function under canon law. American common law courts function under the Ten Commandments, Mosaic law. At the level of the international land jurisdiction served by the Continental Marshals, American Postal District Courts function under the unrevised version of the United States statutes at large, the constitutions, and the organic laws. In the 1920s there was a push to revise and renumber and reorganize the United States statutes at large, but the revision was never actually adopted, because neither the territorial nor the municipal Congress had the authority to change the United States statutes at large. Unlike federal code, which is an administrative codification and interpretation of public law, that is, evidence that a law exists, the United States statutes at large are public law, meant to be enforced by federal marshals, what we now call Continental Marshals and United States Marshals. These are international public laws governing the interface between the land and sea. The Continental Marshals enforce the land side of it, and the United States Marshals enforce the sea side of it, and in that way, they both serve to enforce the constitutions. The guarantees owed to the states and people are enforced by the Continental Marshals, the rights and responsibilities of those exercising delegated power are enforced by the United States Marshals, though to their credit, many U.S. Marshals, like their suffering counterparts, the county sheriffs, have helped to provide a skeletal shield supporting the law of the land. Let's pause a moment and look at the celebrated case of the Colorado Nine. These good men made the mistake of transgressing on the foreign subcontractors' courts, because they mistook them for our courts. If a federal employee made the same mistake and made demands upon one of our American civilian courts, he would be guilty of trespassing. So landsmen transgress and sailors trespass, and both are crimes. I tried to explain this to the Colorado Nine, that you can't correct crimes by committing more crimes yourself, but because they so firmly believed that they were addressing their own public civilian courts run amok, they failed to take my advice. I hope that their experience and sacrifice will be sufficient and that you will all duly note the importance of properly identifying who is who and what is what and where the lines are drawn. As we have seen, all the foreign subcontractor courts are meant to address corporations, corporate employees, and corporate officers, not average Americans and not unincorporated business enterprises, either. The perpetrators of the fraud against us have gone to extreme lengths to kidnap and traffic us into their foreign jurisdictions and to provide themselves with paperwork, bogus birth certificates, falsified master files, and so on, to justify their actions if caught. We, meantime, have trundled on, blindly trusting our employees, and have made no such hostile provisions for ourselves. When one of these foreign subcontractor courts summons the person registered via the birth certificate, they have built a fortress of paper bulwarking their legal presumption that whoever walks through their door in response to their summons made, in that name, is the subject matter of that trademark, and is a municipal citizen of the United States. Hence the use of the slang term, mark, as in easy mark, to reference someone targeted in a con artist scheme. The perpetrators of all this have previously and with malice aforethought deliberately misidentified each American as one of those persons defined as a criminal and therefore as a slave, and papered him over as such. They then invoke the old Scottish Commercial Corporation Constitution and its now long defunct 14th Amendment, and the poor hapless American is entrapped, without a clue about what is actually happening, or the legal presumptions that are being made against him. He is defenseless and at their mercy, literally. The problem for them is that they are acting as brigands against their actual employers and are violating both the spirit and the terms of the constitutional contracts. That man or woman is actually and factually an American owed their protection, but for the moment, the poor soul can't prove anything in his or her favor. And he certainly doesn't know enough to call crap on their 14th Amendment, which has no standing anywhere, at all. So we have brigands operating courts and conspiring to commit fraud and strip assets from Americans, and when the Americans attempt to resist this, they are promptly thrown in jail for committing transgression, albeit in response to gross trespass and breach of trust. And the irony is that most of the judges doing this are Americans, and they are on average just as clueless as their victims. When you bring them to task for it, they will stare at you wide-eyed and say, "This is the way we do it. This the way we've always done it." And they know no better. Like the military and the police, they are being used as tools to eat out the substance of their own country and unknowingly destroy their friends and neighbors, and don't even know they are doing it. Most of them. There are, of course, notable exceptions, Queen's men sitting in to make sure the operation continues to run smoothly and that the court rules and bar associations are used to enforce discipline on any judge or attorney who is less than compliant. This furthers and guarantees the sheep-like obedience of what appear to be American judges and American attorneys working for these foreign subcontractors' courts. Okay, so Joe American is up a creek, without a boat, without a paddle, confused, not a clue what is going on, trusting what he thinks of as his public court system, and being told no different, and being railroaded as a presumed citizen of the United States, owing war reparations left over from a mercenary squabble among his foreign subcontractors, a squabble that officially ended 150 years ago with the peace declarations of President Andrew Johnson. Plus Joe is being prosecuted under a 14th Amendment made to a defunct Scottish commercial corporation charter, a piece of con artist drivel that permanently lost any kind of authority or validity in 1907. If this were not so outrageously stupid on our parts and criminal on theirs, it would be funny, but as it is, this is cause to deport every single bar association member in America and more than enough cause to demand, 1. Dismantling of the dead baby scam, 2. Closure of all municipal courts, they shouldn't be here in any case, 3. Re-education of territorial barristers, 4. International recognition of what the Queen and the Pope have pulled here, 5. Proper education on these topics for every American, 6. Restitution for all those who have been harmed, and 7. Total restoration of our American civilian courts at the expense of the perpetrators. To say nothing of all the assets they have stripped illegally and unlawfully, plus damages for this. But let's go back to poor old Joe American. Here he sits, and so far as it goes, he doesn't even exist. The only evidence that he ever existed, other than, if he is lucky, an entry in the family Bible, is a birth certificate belonging to a baby that died many years ago, with his name attached to it. And even that baby is presumed to be a dual citizen belonging to the foreign subcontractor corporations, not an American. The first thing he has to do is wake up. Unpleasant as that is, he has to be taught the facts and assisted in asserting them. He has to establish his provenance and prove where he came from, and he has to declare his political status as an American state national and/or American state citizen. Note, an American state national is one of the people and owes no duty to the government owes duty to him, except that he must keep the peace, and if that requires serving in the militia, to serve in the militia if he physically and mentally able. An American state citizen is an American state national who voluntarily serves his state government in some capacity, usually as a juror, militia member, and member of the state assembly. Step 1 on the road home for Joe American is securing his identity, proving, declaring, and recording evidence of one's actual identity and political status as an American. Step 2 is to assemble all these returning Americans, who never actually went anywhere, in their state and county assemblies. Step 3 is for them to hold their lawful public elections, fill their jury pools, fill their vacated offices. Step 4, taking place more or less in tandem, is to bring enforcement back to the land and soil jurisdictions, which is where you boys and ladies come in. The United States of America, the unincorporated version, has summoned the actual physically defined states to assemble and has set up an organization, the American States Assembly, to help organize and expedite steps 1 and 2. The state assemblies then become responsible for Step 3, and that accomplishes the basic restoration of the American civilian court system and county and state government operations. For the moment, all of this is being done by volunteers and free will donations. Obviously, those interested in being actual county sheriffs and being able to wear the star and wield its authority, need to get involved in organizing and supporting their factual county and state assembly process and need to stand for election. The one hard part about this is that you will have to serve as a volunteer for now and expatriate from any federal citizenship obligation, which means resigning from any corporate sheriff position you might presently hold. The foreign federales allow dual citizenships of all kinds, but the actual states of the Union allow only one kind of citizenship, state citizenship. So if you want to serve as the actual county sheriff and be the highest elected peacekeeping official in the country on your little patch of land and soil, there's a sacrifice involved at the current time. If you are currently serving as the sheriff of an incorporated county, you can also serve by staying where you are and using your discretion to enforce the public law and protect the people living in your county, and by understanding and supporting whoever steps forward to fill the actual county sheriff's office. Those interested in serving as continental marshals have a quicker route forward and can receive their land commissions directly from the United States of America without waiting for the assembling and the electing process. Continental marshals are peacekeeping officers, not elected peacekeeping officials, so all you have to do or worry about is having or acquiring a thorough understanding of the jurisdiction you operate in, a familiarity with the constitutions and the United States statutes at large, knowledge of current international police protocols, and the moxie to stand up for and enforce the constitutional guarantees that the states and the people are owed. There are among us rift and retired United States Marshals and even some quite elderly but still sharp federal marshals who can assist recruits in gaining the necessary skills, connections, knowledge, and insight. Our country has been undermined by ignorance on one side and by the commercial interests of our purported friends and allies on the other. We are left with the task of restoration of our lawful government to full function, the lawful claim and conversion of assets that have been purloined if not outright stolen, and addressing the crimes against us, all at the same time. To do this, we must educate ourselves and educate a lot of other people, too, but the way we look at it, we have no choice. We either do this and commit to it, or the entire world will be owned and operated by faceless, unfeeling, predatory, and unaccountable commercial corporation interests that operate under color of law, while actually accepting no law at all, but the law of tooth and claw. If that's the kind of world you want to leave your children, then go home and lick the boots of whatever phantom suits you. The rest of us must stay the course to save our country and then, to save our world. We are thankful to the true God that enough of us are waking up in time and taking appropriate action. End Part 5.